Welcome to the Visionary Chronicles, a podcast dedicated to uncovering the strategies and insights that drive innovative, disruptive businesses. Join us as we explore the mindsets, cultures, and solutions powering the next generation of industry leaders and creative trailblazers. Whether you're seeking to inject new life into your organization or spark transformative growth, the Visionary Chronicles is your guide to executable, cutting-edge business strategy. Hello and welcome to the Visionary Chronicles. Appreciate you being with me today. As always, happy Thursday. We're going to continue today on our series on my new book I'm releasing, The Visionary Leader, The Success Principles of the World's Greatest Visionaries. And thank you for the feedback that we've been getting on initial reviews, and I'm proud to say that we've just been awarded category finalists for the prestigious Eric Hoffer Award. For those who aren't familiar with that, take a look at it. It's a very prestigious award. We're in the business category finalists, which is in the top 10% of all books on Eric Hoffer, so I really appreciate that. That is a very prestigious review, and that's a great start to hopefully the release of The Visionary Leader, which will be on June 30th of this year. So we're going to continue with the Visionary Leaders on the Visionary Chronicles today. So we'll continue our series. The first one, if you haven't listened to it last week, it kind of gives you the recap of why I wrote The Visionary Leader, a little bit of an overview of what The Visionary Leader is all about, and some of the principles, which we'll get into a little bit more in depth today and give you a little bit broader overview of what the context of the books is. But my intention with this series, just so you understand, is not only to give an introduction of the book, but to also engage you with all of these principles that are outlined in the book and along with the visionaries. And I'll follow up on a previous podcast I talked about where we felt these visionaries, wouldn't it be cool if we could actually interview them? So we are going to do that series, but I felt it would be better if we start out with a few chapters in the book to give you an introduction to the book. And then what we'll do is we'll move into what I call the visionary interviews, which will be the actual people that I profile in the book, like Thomas Edison, like Steve Jobs, like Albert Einstein. How cool is that? We actually have, I mentioned, two in the books already. We've got Steve Jobs and Albert Einstein in the books. And so it's been a ton of work. So hopefully you think it's as cool as we do in putting this series together. But let's start out with kind of an overview again of the Visionary Leader, the success principles of the world's greatest visionaries. So in this episode, we'll explore the visionary, what I call the visionary's blueprint. What does this look like? A foundational set of 17. Yes, 17. You're not going to be here for 2 hours today. I'm going to give you an overview of it. And the overview, the attention is that you'll get an idea of what the rest of some of these other episodes will be entailing and what the book looks like from a construct standpoint in the chapters that I have in the book. And hopefully you'll find it as inspiring as those that have reviewed it so far and those that are continuing to review it and the feedback that we've gotten from leaders that I respect with the utmost and have given me a review on the book and have been pleased with the content and have actually started to apply some of it. So that's always, to me, the greatest benefit of writing a book is not how many did you sell, but rather how many purchased and were able to apply it and utilize it in their day-to-day. That, to me, is the compliment of writing the book. So we're going to talk about just kind of an overview, again, of 17 core principles that we're going to be talking about more in depth as we move along in these series. So we'll talk about these core principles, these 17 core principles that define mindset, character, and behavior of these transformative, world-changing visionaries and leaders that I outline in the book. So I always like to start out, as you know, with a quote. So this is a very appropriate one for today. Leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality, from Warren Bennis. What a great quote. Again, leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. A quote from Warren Bennis. And that's so true. And the idea that I always talk about is only as good as the board it's written on. Unless that translates vision to reality, it just is an idea that's stuck in space that really has no life. So whether you're building a brand, leading a movement, or just searching for a purpose in your professional, or also I'll say your personal journey, these principles are your roadmap. And that's why I put these in the book. There's a very specific reason why I have these principles in the book. And there's also a very specific reason as you start reading the book why I selected these visionaries for each one of these principles. So kind of the context of the books is that what are these principles that visionary leaders have? And within those core principles, who would be ideal to profile as somebody that had that trait more than any other visionary? So you'll see that trait aligned with a visionary like Thomas Edison, Elon Musk, Martin Luther King Jr., Socrates, Gandhi, all of these great leaders that have these visionary traits. So when we talk about this DNA of visionary leadership, these practices and perspectives embraced by these visionary, let's say, legends, that's who they are: Steve Jobs, Henry Ford, Martin Luther King Jr., Elon Musk. These leaders, let's just face it, they just didn't lead. They transformed. And now with looking back and pulling together these principles, you can too. Some of these traits you already have because you're listening to this podcast and not somebody who's telling you that which you don't already know. So the intention here is we can tell you something, hopefully, that you don't already know but would like to know and how to apply it in your day-to-day, whether in personal or professional leadership. So some of the key points that I'll cover in this episode, and again, we'll get into more in depth in these areas and these traits as I move along with this series on the Visionary Leader book. And so the first I thought I would talk about is, being it is the visionary leader, what is visionary leadership? Many times, whether I'm talking with Liquid Mind, where I whiteboard with executives and brands across the world, they want to know what is visionary leadership, because it can be very blurry to people as to what the context of visionary leadership really is. Some people may overthink it, and many people underthink it, meaning that there's kind of this happy medium of what people think visionary leadership is. So I thought we would start out with really 4 areas of focus with visionary leaders. And the first is visionary leadership as a movement creator. And what I mean by that is visionary leadership is the ability to see not just what is, but rather what could be. And not only that, but to ignite a movement around that vision that they see. That's key. It's one thing to say you have a great idea, but if you can't move people, build passion within people, be authentic about your messaging, you're never going to realize that vision. So it's a style of leadership where the future is imagined with clarity and confidence and authentication, and where others are inspired to follow, not because they're told they have to follow, but rather because they believe in the mission you have. And visionary leaders build momentum, not just strategy. And when I whiteboard this, many people will put up their strategy. Well, visionary leadership is having to define strategy that's executed in the marketplace. You have to be careful with the word strategy when you talk about visionaries, because they're really out-of-the-box thinkers. Many times strategy is a defined path to your destination. But more often than not, what I've seen with all visionary leaders, ones that I've worked with, ones that I profile in the book, it's all what I call this switchback leadership, pivoting, but never losing sight of your destination. Strategy for many leaders that aren't visionary is a straight path. It's never that way. And they mobilize people with a purpose. So that's the first point. The second one is visionary leadership as purpose-driven innovation. And what I mean by that is visionary leadership, just think about this, is at the intersection of purpose and possibility. So just think of this path that you're traveling down as a leader and defining what purpose-driven innovation is. So many times people think, well, innovation is just innovation. It's very, very black and white. But you have to have a purpose behind what you classify as your innovation pipeline. And it has to be at the intersection of purpose and possibility. What does the future look like, and what's the possibility of that future if we were to realize that vision? So it's a discipline of anchoring every action inside your company, brand, service, whatever it is, in a meaningful mission while relentlessly innovating toward a better future. That's really the key of what we're talking about. These leaders don't just adapt to change, they drive it. Think about that. That's why I say switchback leadership. And driving innovation with a purpose is they know that their vision will allow them to be authentic with a passion that everybody can wrap their arms around and embrace. They make bold decisions. They embrace calculated risk and unify teams with a shared belief that the future can be better, and they are the ones that can lead it. Not only lead it, but sustain it. That's what I talk about all the time. It's one thing to be a one-hit wonder. It's another thing entirely to be able to sustain that vision long-term. And number 3 is the ability to see the future clearly, articulate it with a passion, and inspire others to follow. So at the heart of visionary leadership is foresight. And I talk about this in the book as future casting, meaning the ability to see the future. This isn't a crystal ball that these visionary leaders have. It's a gift that they have. Every visionary leader I profile in the book and or I've worked with on brands across the world is that they've had this ability to see the future casting, and not only see the future, but understand how to take steps towards achieving that vision for the future. It's called foresight or future casting, the ability to anticipate where the world, industry, or your organization is heading. Visionary leaders possess a clear mental image of a better future for the company, brand, or service. So grounded in reality, but not elevated by ambition. So you really want to make sure that the ambitious, the ones with a passion, that are authentic, that can follow that purpose authentically that you've translated to them in detail, will follow you and build a community around you. And this is what I talk about with culture. And you'll see that in the book. One thing that few people talk about on strategy and success of companies and brands, every brand that I've seen, a priority for them is culture. And this is what we're talking about here. Grounded in reality, but elevated by ambition. Ambition that comes from your team. They don't just see what's next, they see the future. And number 4 is a fusion of imagination, strategy, resilience, and faith. Visionary leaders lead movements, not just meetings. That's the key to it. Man, I tell you, you talk about speeches that people have made and people classifying those that can move you, build this fire within you, are those that are visionary. And it can be a poet. It can be a musician. It can be an artist. I put that in the book. Leonardo da Vinci, Beethoven are all in my book. Most people don't classify them as visionaries, but they are visionaries. They're not just business visionaries. There's music visionaries. There's poet visionaries. And Steve talked about this when he was at Apple, is I can get an engineer whenever I want, but it's much harder for me to find creatives, the crazy ones. Those are the ones that impact and have a difference. So visionary leadership really transcends traditional corporate behavior because of that. You know, it's not about holding status meetings or managing spreadsheets. It's about creating meaningful change that people can realize for their future. This is achieved through a unique combination of qualities that elevate a leader and their team. So those are the 4 really, let's just say 4 points on visionary leadership. Again, visionary leadership as a movement creator, number 1. Visionary leadership as purpose-driven innovation, number 2. The ability to see the future clearly, articulated with a passion and inspire others to follow, is number 3. A fusion of imagination, of strategy, resilience, and faith. Visionary leaders lead with movements, not just meetings. So 4 great points on visionary leadership and what that looks like. Now let's talk about, again, this is the detail in the book, and I'm just going to do an overview of these 17 core principles that I talk about in the book. But it gives you an idea of the context of the book and how you can apply it in your day-to-day, both personally and professionally. So we'll explore these in more detail in future episodes, but for today, let's just introduce them as quite what I call this full system. And number 1 is that we talk about is vision, a compelling view of the future that drives everything. That's the first core principle that all visionary leaders have. The second we talk about is the mindset, the mental discipline to lead through resistance, doubt, and change. Number 3 is ideas. You're not visionary without great ideas. An endless well of innovation and simplicity with impact. I always say sophisticated is make it simple as sophisticated. That's the Apple principle when Steve was there, and it holds true today for all visionaries that I've seen and I outlined in the book. Number 4 is passion. It's really a contagious, what I call energy, that ignites teams and inspires those to follow through. And number 5 is insight. It's a deep strategic thinking and foresight into future trends and challenges that brands, companies, and services face in the real world today. And number 6 is reality distortion. Now, most people think of reality distortion as a Steve Jobs principle. But many people deploy this now since hearing of this reality distortion field that Steve had. It's the boldness to shape new paradigms and ignore limitations. Now, how many times have you been in meetings, been around people that all they talk about is negativity? Talk about not the possibilities, but the impossibilities of what you need to achieve in your business. And that's really where you need a visionary who has a reality distortion field. It's not a negative, it's a positive. And number 7 is a commitment. And this is a relentless dedication to your vision, values, and a daily execution towards realizing that goal or that vision. And number 8, which is a tandem with commitment, but it's a separate section within itself in the book, is relentlessness. I love the word relentlessness because it really is this refusal to quit. You've seen people, I'd say Winston Churchill during World War II, where it was don't quit, don't quit, don't quit, don't quit. You know, it's one of these things where leaders need to have inbred into their bloodlines the ability to find a path to your destination regardless of the barriers that are put in front of you. So it's a refusal to quit, but also self-awareness to understand when you need to pivot. So even when facing overwhelming odds, it's the refusal to quit. And it's a machine-like precision. It's a flawless execution, they call it, of structure and strategic alignment. It's a machine-like precision that these great leaders have. And it's also risk-taking. I always say safe is risky. And it's the courage to challenge norms and step beyond comfort zones. And that's really a key component to ensuring that you realize your vision. Is no great product, not one in the history of our world, has ever been realized without taking risk and failing while taking a risk. No great product has been realized without not just taking a risk, but also failing during that risk taking. And number 11, which is again part of the self-awareness of visionary leaders, is they learn from failures. They're not so stubborn that they never learn from what they failed at. So turning setbacks into a fuel for growth. And again, I'll use Thomas Edison, who famously said, I've found 9,999 ways not to invent the light bulb. Can you imagine if he stopped at 9,998? I mean, that's relentlessness, learning from failure, and risk-taking all in one with Thomas Edison during the invention of the light bulb. So it's learning from failure, turning setbacks into fuel for growth. That's number 11 we'll talk about. And then number 12, which is an interesting one that not a lot of people talk about, but it is a reality in many companies and brands, is carrying the torch. Patagonia is a great example. Microsoft's a great example. Honoring those who led before and building a legacy for those who follow. Now, Nike could also be one of those as well. It's very challenging for leaders to follow a visionary. Maybe someone who started a company, maybe someone who ran a company. So these are all very, very difficult. But they're all part of this visionary principles and formula to becoming visionary. So some of these you're not going to come across, but they're put in the book for those that do come across it and how to navigate through carrying the torch. And number 13 is soul of the organization. And Elon Musk is a great example of this with Tesla. He embodies and protects the core values of the brand itself, the soul of the brand and what you're all about. Patagonia is a great one as well. And Nike, when Phil Knight was there, Shoe Dog was there. And number 14 is isolation. You know, some people will kind of question, well, isolation, is that really a core principles of visionary leaders? Absolutely it is, because you need isolation in order to have quiet time. You need to have the ability to have quiet time, not only to come up with ideas, but also quiet time is during your leadership. Others look to you for leadership during tough times as you walk through barriers, as you go to your destination. And every one of these is navigating the loneliness of leadership and the strength found in isolation. And then number 15 is faith. And again, I've not seen a leader that has said that they don't have faith when they were going through tough times. There's a higher power for them when they have confidence in the unseen, belief in a better future, and often a spiritual foundation that they work off of. So that's critical to success as well. And I actually have probably the greatest visionary of all time is Jesus. So these are things that I talk about in the book that not a lot of people talk about that I think will really be a benefit to you as you go through the book. And number 17 is transformation. They're transformational leaders. They just don't lead a project or a program. They're transformational. The ultimate goal is leaving behind something greater than yourself. That's transformational. Think about what Steve created at Apple when he came back. Not only when he was there and he founded Apple, but more importantly, when he came back and made Apple the most valuable company on the planet. And we talk about that. We open this series with the story of Steve Jobs, his return to Apple, a visionary blueprint in action. From near bankruptcy in the 90s, becoming the most valuable brand on the planet. And Steve applied these principles: vision through the iMacs, disruption through iPod, iPhone, and iPad, and precision and simplicity was at the core of every product. It was purpose-driven. And Steve reminds us again, as I said earlier, here's to the crazy ones, because those who see differently are the ones who change everything. That's probably the greatest marketing campaign ever to be released into the brand world. If you haven't seen it, the Think Different campaign was significant. And also the release of the Macintosh in 1984 commercial as well. So as we finish up on these 17 principles, I told you we wouldn't be here all day. And I really wanted to give you an overview of what we'll be talking about in the next few weeks here as it comes up to the release of the book, The Visionary Leader, the Success Principles of the World's Greatest Visionaries. on June 30th. These are 17 principles that aren't just ideals. They're core traits of every single visionary that I profile in the book, as well as ones I work with at Liquid Mind, or ones that I've personally worked with, whether it be Adidas, TaylorMade, all of these brands, working with them. This has all been kind of a blueprint to unlocking the visionary within you. And now it's really my intent with the book is to help you. And the sale of the book is one thing, but the more important thing for me as I continue to build these series of books, the first one, which is an award-winning best-selling book, The Visionary Brand, this is a complement to the Visionary Brand, the Visionary Leader. So over the next several episodes, we'll break down each principle, share the stories of iconic leaders, ones who live them, and also help you bring vision to your life. And there are many that will be applied to your business, but there will be many that will apply to your personal life as well. So as I conclude this Visionary Chronicles, I'm going to ask a question. So let me ask you, are you building something that lasts? Think about that for a minute. Something where you're building a legacy. And we're going to help you build that vision. And with the release of The Visionary Leader, the success principles of the world's greatest visionaries, actually being released today on June 30th. So would appreciate and encourage you to grab a copy. It's available now wherever books are sold, and it's a perfect companion to what I've been talking about today. If you're looking to reignite your purpose or lead with more clarity in a complex world, and hey, I get it, it's a complex world out there. But isn't it great that we have visionaries to look back on? How did they achieve their success? They didn't necessarily start out as visionaries. Certainly a lot of them were born with this capability, but they really had principles like we talked about today that they stuck with day after day after day. And eventually it allowed them to become a visionary leader. So I encourage you, purchase The Visionary Leader. And really this book is a culmination of decades of research, experiences, and really real world insights into what makes these leaders like Steve Jobs, Leonardo da Vinci, and Elon Musk truly visionary. And along with what I talked about earlier in the podcast, the reviews, initial reviews, were very blessed. And other reviews, such as a masterclass in leadership. This book doesn't just inspire, it equips. And I love that one, and I put that one in there for this reason, is really the intent here for me in writing the book was to equip you to become visionary. Not only following these leaders, but obviously giving you a chapter and verse, point by point, where you can improve on your weaknesses and also improve on your strengths. Both are important. The other review we had is a rare and practical guide to unlocking your visionary potential. The reason I love that one is because potential. Everybody has potential, but you may not necessarily know how to achieve visionary status. You don't have to have all of these principles, but certainly take a measure of where you are as a leader today and see how close you are to visionary. And the book will also give you aspirational and inspirational visionaries and points to want to adopt in your career and personal life. And as a thank you to my loyal, and I say loyal podcast listeners in the visionary community we're building together, you can grab an ebook version today for just $1.99. But here's the but, that's only through the month of July. So I wanted to give you that opportunity. And if you head over to Amazon, search for The Visionary Leader, the success principles of the world's greatest visionaries, or check the show notes for a direct link, I would really appreciate it. And it's not from a selfish perspective. I'd be truly grateful if you read the book, if you take a moment to leave an honest review on Amazon. Your feedback not only helps others discover the book, but it helps build future visionaries. And it helps them to find clarity, confidence, and courage to lead with purpose. The only way I can really dig through that mess of Amazon is with your help. So your support truly and authentically means the world to me. And your purchase goes a long way in helping us spread the vision even further. So until next time, stay bold, stay visionary, And as always, lead with purpose. The Visionary Chronicles, where the future is created by those bold enough to shape it. Thank you again for your continued support, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Until next time, keep innovating, keep leading, keep shaping the future.